In order to answer your question in the most comprehensive way, I need to tell the prehistory of events that led me to this fateful meeting. As a student of architecture in 2012, I prepared a document in which I postulated that the universe has an architect, based on the Pythagorean idea that God is a geometer. My report was based on the golden ratio in nature. It was then that I reflected on the fact that since everything in the universe has a structure, stages, sequence and levels of development, it follows that the same must be reflected in the architecture of our minds. After a while I came across one of the greatest philosophers that many recognize as the Einstein of consciousness. His name is Ken Wilber. Everything I felt he described a long time ago, drawing on the great wisdom of consciousness researchers who, in their own way, have shaped different models of the evolution of consciousness through the ladder of stages through which the individual ascends, expanding their field of perception. Inspired by the writings of Sri Aurobindo, Jean Gebser, Jean Piaget, Claire Graves and many others, Ken Wilber elegantly presents a map of the development of the human mind based on the same idea that consciousness should reflect the same principles of universe architecture as those present in the external world in the form of successive stages of evolution. Since Ken himself believes that any models about the development of consciousness can be useful in their own way, I decided to try to look at the proposed stages through the eyes of a science fiction writer. I was clearly aware that there must be, so to speak, smooth transitions between the world-centric stage of development and the cosmocentric stage, because the difference between the two is absolutely colossal. It is unlikely that a humanity which has managed to come to the world-centric stage on a single planet will be able in the next stage to contain the unity of billions of star systems in trillions of galaxies throughout the universe. There must be a smooth gradual development of consciousness from one planet to several planets, from several planets to a star system, from one star system to several, from several star systems to one galaxy, from one galaxy to several, and only at the end when human consciousness can hold unity with millions of galaxies which may contain other life forms, when consciousness truly becomes inclusive can the final stage be reached, namely, the universal. The universal stage of consciousness implies that the self-awareness of evolved life forms transcends racial, cultural and historical differences and identities. The self-consciousness of evolved life forms is fully identified with the cosmos. Cosmic consciousness perceives manifested life forms as an infinite unity. In turn, the world-centered stage can only give humanity a self-consciousness that will be defined by a single planetary unity of shared interdependence and interconnectedness. The integration of multiple disparate ethnocentric groups into one coherent integral multicultural system. Life at this stage will be perceived solely in the form of the needs and interests of planetary society. You see, the leap is too big. How can a society which has managed to come to a balance on one planet see and feel unity with the xenomorphs, for example? And if such forms of life do exist, only from the position of the universal stage of consciousness will they really be perceived as unified in relation to an observer. It is one thing to have someone on a beach somewhere talking about unity and love for all living beings, but it is quite another to have to put this knowledge into practice when looking at a hatching egg inside which facehugger tentacles start moving. And what if there are those civilizations that exist like the common field of consciousness like Stanislav Lem's Solaris? And if there are such, from what position should we perceive them? From the world-centric position? And what if there are whole systems which are subordinate to an organic or technological collective mind? They, too, must be somehow interacted with beyond the known world-centric stage. Roughly along similar lines I reasoned at the time while playing the space strategy game Stellaris, in which you need to choose the right diplomatic moves towards intelligent life forms which evolve on the same map, the galaxy, as the player in exactly the same way, trying to preserve your species in a bid to survive. What would you do if one powerful civilization with which you have an important economic relationship wanted to philosophically strengthen DNA as the most important life code by requiring that your civilization must interbreed to develop a universal gene pool of life? What if they look even scarier than the aliens? And if you refuse, the diplomatic relationship between you will be tainted, as your civilization will be accused of cosmic racism and genetic narcissism, resulting in sanctions on behalf of the entire cosmic community. How will you proceed? From what stage do you look at these events? What kind of thinking is needed to see things even more panoramically? What if one civilization willingly uses tampering with the DNA of more primitive life forms to establish dictates on a planet of interest, for the sake of resources, by subjugating? However, one in the cosmos, a completely different mindset is needed, one that goes beyond the exclusive identification of humanity with its own species and with its own planet. To arrive at it requires a gradual evolution of consciousness through intermediate stages. Then I became interested in what could be between the world-centric stage of consciousness and the cosmic one. Unfortunately, I did not find anything specific. There is only a model of human development in the future. It is called Kardashev's scale. But in it there is absolutely no reference to stages of consciousness, without which any evolution of species on the Kardashev scale is simply impossible. Why? It is better to read about it from Ken Wilber himself in his wonderful book, Integral Spirituality. Naturally, he does not refer to my scale as an example, but he perfectly illustrates why no types of civilizations are possible if they do not take into account the map of consciousness development, through the methodology of the integral approach. By this time, thanks to my passion for science fiction, I already had some sketches of these intermediaries. I understood clearly that there must be gaps, or rather they cannot be gaps and they must be worked on. As a result of the synthesis I did in one of my meditation sessions, I had a vision of an 8-pointed star. I clearly saw the missing 4 stages of consciousness. At that moment it hit me and everything was born in my mind in a state of flux. When that happened, I clearly understood that this is what I was meant to do on this planet. To be an artist who, through his work, will draw the attention of the audience to the universal development of a model about the stages of consciousness together with the successive development of civilization in the cosmos to reach cosmic consciousness. That night I experienced a whole cascade of inner revelations that expanded my consciousness by changing certain parts of my personality too. A few months after that I painted my sign of the 8 stages of consciousness and development strategies in the cosmos on a 4x3 meter canvas in Carrara, Italy. Since then, this symbol has become the emblem of my art. Sometime after I finished working on this polo, a great fear came over me. I realized that I would really have to do it all my life without any guarantee of anything. Then I said to myself that I need some sign from the universe, not from my space of consciousness, but from the outside world, that I am on the right path and this is not a game of consciousness. Half a year after that I gave the Dalai Lama 14 a painting called Astral SpaceX, Fundamental Principles of Cosmocybernetics, precisely because of the generalized thoughts I had put into my painting. This encounter meant everything to me because I could clearly see that my path was blessed. However, this does not mean that I possess some kind of absolute knowledge or that the view I choose to offer at the stage of consciousness is the truth in the last resort. Absolutely not. It is simply one of the models that appeals to your own thoughts on the future of humanity. Here it is best to quote Ken Wilber. There are a variety of ways of slicing or breaking down the process of development and, accordingly, a variety of stage concepts. All of them can be useful. The chakra system, for example, identifies 7 main stages or levels of consciousness. Renowned anthropologist Jean Gebser speaks of 5 stages: archaic, magical, mythical, rational and integral. Some Western psychological models distinguish 8, 12 or more levels of development. Which one is correct? All are correct. The process is the same, just different things are tracked in it. Meeting the Dalai Lama 14 simply helped me to gain confidence in where I chose to go.